Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari. Here we go again. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari. One more time. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Jashodanandana, Jaya Vraja Janaranjana, Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Tiravanachari, Jaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Sorry for going so high. If we have a harmonium, that would be cool sometime. All right. Maybe like at the next break. I got a new tune. Is there a mat I can put this drum on? I don't want to take your mat, but a mat. Okay. Thank you very much. Jai Jai Shri Caitanya, Jai Nityananda, Jai Reta Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. We're continuing our reading of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 18, the Lord's visit to Sri Vrindavan.
Which text?
208.
208. What is text?
208.
208. 208. 208.
Vijuli Khan was very young, and he was also the son of the king. All the other Muslims or Patanas headed by Ramdas were his servants. Vijuli Khan also fell down at the lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Lord placed his foot on his head. After bestowing his mercy on them in this way, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu left. All those Patana Muslims then became mendicants. Later, these very Patanas became celebrated as the Patana Vaishnavas. They toured all over the country and chanted the glorious activities of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Vijuli Khan became a greatly advanced devotee, and his importance was celebrated at every holy place of pilgrimage. In this way, Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu performed his pastimes. Coming to the western part of India, he bestowed good fortune upon the Yavanas and Mlechas. Purport: the word Yavana means meat eater. Anyone from a meat-eating community is called a Yavana. One who does not strictly observe the Vedic regulative principles is called a Mlecha. These words do not refer to any particular man. Even if a person is born in a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra family, he is a Mlecha or Yavana if he does not strictly follow the regulative principles or if he eats meat. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next went to a holy place of pilgrimage called Soro Kshetra. He took his bath in the Ganges there and started for Prayag, on the path along the banks of the Ganges. At Soro Kshetra, the Lord requested the Sanodiya Brahmana and Rajaput Krishnadas to return home. But with folded hands, they began to speak as follows. They prayed, "Let us go to Prayag with you. If we don't go, when shall we again get the association of your lotus feet?" This country is mainly occupied by Muslims. At any place, someone can create a disturbance And although your companion Balabhadra Bhattacharya is a learned scholar, he does not know how to speak the local language. Hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted their proposal by smiling mildly. Thus those two persons continued to accompany him. Whoever got to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would feel himself overwhelmed with ecstatic love and would begin to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Whoever met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became a Vaishnava, and whoever met that Vaishnava also became a Vaishnava. Thank you. Hare Krishna. In this way, all the towns and villages became Vaishnava, one after another. Just as the Lord inundated South India on his tour there, he also inundated the western part of the country with love of Godhead. Purport: according to some opinions, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited Kurukshetra while going to Prayag from Vrindavan. There is a temple of Bhadrakali in Kurukshetra, and near that temple there is a temple containing the deity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finally arrived at Prayag, and for 10 successive days bathed in the confluence of the rivers Jamuna and Ganges during the festival of Makara Sankranti, Magh Mela. Purport: actually, the word Triveni indicates the confluence of 3 rivers, namely the Ganges, Jamuna, and Saraswati. Presently, the Saraswati River is not visible, but the river Ganges and the river Jamuna merge at Allahabad. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's visit to Vrindavan and his activities there are unlimited. Even Lord Shesha, who has thousands of hoods, cannot reach the end of his activities. What ordinary living being can describe the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? I have only indicated the general direction in the form of a summary. The pastimes and methods of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are uncommon. Unfortunate is he who cannot believe even after hearing all these things. From the beginning to end, the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are uncommon. Just hear them with faith and accept them as true and correct. Whoever argues about this is a great fool. He intentionally and personally brings a thunderbolt down upon his head. The pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are an ocean of nectar. Even a drop of this ocean can inundate the whole world with transcendental bliss. Shri Rup Raghunath Pade Jar Ash, Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahi Krishnadas. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Shri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, 18th chapter, describing the Lord's visit to Sri Vrindavan and his conversion of the Muslim soldiers on the way to Prayag. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. And now we're going to hear a little bit from the Bhagavad Gita, if I have permission. Is it all right? And I'm starting in the 17th chapter, named Divisions of Faith. Arjuna Vacha, Ye Shastra Vidhim Utsreja, Yajante Shadayan Vita, Tesham Nishta Tuka Krishna, Satvamaho Rajastamaha. Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of Scripture, but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? Purport. In the 4th chapter, 39th verse, it is said that a person faithful to a particular type of worship gradually becomes elevated to the stage of knowledge and attains the highest perfectional stage of peace and prosperity. In the 16th chapter, it is concluded that one who does not follow the principles laid down in the scriptures is called an asura, demon, and one who follows the scriptural injunctions faithfully is called a deva, or demigod. Now, if one, with faith, follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions, what is his position? This doubt of Arjuna's is to be cleared by Krishna. Are those who create some sort of God by selecting a human being and placing their faith in him, worshipping in goodness, passion, or in ignorance? Do such persons attain the perfectional stage of life? Is it possible for them to be situated in real knowledge and elevate themselves to the highest perfectional stage? Do those who do not follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but who have faith in something and worship gods and demigods and men, attain success in their efforts? Arjuna is putting these questions to Krishna. Text 2. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Trividha Bhavati Shraddha Dehinam Swa Subhavaja Dehinam Sa Subhavaja Satviki Rajasi Chaiva Tamasi Chetitam Shrinu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds: in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this. Purport. Those who know the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but out of laziness or indolence, give up following these rules and regulations, are governed by the modes of material nature. Who's got the dictionary? Who's got a dictionary? Okay. Indolence. And also, nice if you can go online. There's an etymological dictionary online. Etymoline, it's called. Hare Krishna. Indolence. Indolence.
Indolence, avoidance
Yeah.
of activity or exertion, laziness. Example is my failure is probably due to my indolence.
Where's the word come from, please?
It's French,
It-
16th century.
French, 16th century, from what word?
Yeah, indifference to pain, or directly from late Latin, indolentia, freedom from pain, insensibility.
Okay. Freedom from pain. Is that what it is? Say it again, please.
Yeah, indifference to pain.
Indifference to pain.
Is from the French.
From
16th
French.
Century, and then late
You know the word?
Urban Dictionary.
Oh.
Urban
You speak
Dictionary
French, right?
Can't be bothered.
Can't be bothered. Urban Dictionary says can't be bothered. Okay. Indolence. I lost where I was. Where am I, Prabhu? In the purport? Where? Number 2. Those who know the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but out of laziness or indolence, give up following these rules and regulations, are governed by the modes of material nature. Who here wants to be governed by the modes of material nature? Raise your hand. I mean, when you put it like that. According to their previous activities in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, they acquire a nature which is of a specific quality. The association of the living entity with the different modes of nature has been going on perpetually. Since the living entity is in contact with material nature, he acquires different types of mentality according to his association with the material modes. But this nature can be changed if one associates with a bona fide spiritual master and abides by his rules and the scriptures. Gradually, one can change his position from ignorance to goodness or from passion to goodness. The conclusion is that blind faith in a particular mode of nature cannot help a person become elevated to the perfectional stage. One has to consider things carefully, with intelligence, in the association of a bona fide spiritual master. Thus, one can change his position to a higher mode of nature. 3. Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata shraddha mayo yam purusho yo yash shraddha sa eva saha. O son of Bharat, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. Purport. Everyone has a particular type of faith, regardless of what he is. But his faith is considered good, passionate, or ignorant according to the nature he has acquired. Thus, according to his particular type of faith, one associates with certain persons. Now, the real fact is that every living being, as is stated in 15th chapter, is originally a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, one is originally transcendental to all the modes of material nature. But when one forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes into contact with the material nature in conditional life, he generates his own position by association with the different varieties of material nature. The resultant artificial faith and existence are only material. Although one may be conducted by some impression or by some conception of life, originally he is nirguna, or transcendental. Therefore, one has to become cleansed of the material contamination that he has acquired in order to regain his relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is the only path back without fear, Krishna consciousness. If one is situated in Krishna consciousness, then that path is guaranteed for his elevation to the perfectional stage. If one does not take to this path of self-realization, then he is surely to be conducted by the influence of the modes of nature. The word shraddha, or faith, is very significant in this verse. Shraddha, or faith, originally comes out of the mode of goodness. One's faith may be in a demigod, or some created god, or some mental concoction. One's strong faith is supposed to be productive of works of material goodness. But in material conditional life, no works are completely purified. They are mixed. They are not in pure goodness. Pure goodness is transcendental. In purified goodness, one can understand the real nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As long as one's faith is not completely in purified goodness, the faith is subject to contamination by any of the modes of material nature. The contaminated modes of material nature expand to the heart. Therefore, according to the position of the heart in contact with a particular mode of material nature, one's faith is established. It should be understood that if one's heart is in the mode of goodness, his faith is also in the mode of goodness. If his heart is in the mode of passion, his faith is also in the mode of passion. If his heart is in the mode of darkness, illusion, his faith is also thus contaminated. Thus, we find different types of faith in this world, and there are different types of religions due to different types of faith. The real principle of religious faith is situated in the mode of pure goodness. But because the heart is tainted, we find different types of religious principles. Thus, according to different types of faith, there are different kinds of worship. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurundinitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We'll just see a brief pause for any reflections. Anything you noticed, you heard, you picked up from what we heard so far, or if you want to ask a question to illuminate the conversation. Although I should say expand. Prabhu,
What does it mean to associate with a mode of nature?
what does it mean to associate with the mode of nature? Generally means to associate with persons who have acquired a particular mode of nature. Of course, everything's made of the modes of nature, and therefore we find in the science of Vastu that any object we associate with has some influence on us. The kind of environment that we're in also has, it's organized by the modes of material nature. But in associating with people who have a particular predominance of a particular mode of nature, the interaction becomes especially effective. That's why, or I should say infective. That's why it's especially mentioned in the Nectar of Instruction that one should be careful about associating with those who are worldly minded, which means they're guided by the modes of material nature and not by Shastra. So oftentimes people talk about the effect of the planets, like grahas. They're called grabbers. But planets actually ultimately are people too. That could be a bumper sticker. Planets are people too. And we can notice that whatever orbit we're in, whatever type of people we're in orbit of, or who are in our orbit, we're most affected by. In fact, even in modern day self-help, there's a lot of discussion about how whomever you're associating with, you can guarantee you'll develop that person's qualities and habits. Yeah. Yes.
Could you explain what is meant by wherever your heart is, that is where your faith is?
Yeah. Wherever your heart is, that is where your faith is, as is mentioned in Yam Purusha Yam. Krishna is basically saying here, wherever your heart goes, or whatever your heart is made of, that's the person. So the word Shraddha, which oftentimes is translated as faith, is a compound word. Shraddha means the heart, and da is an active verb. It means where you place something. So literally, the word Shraddha means where you place your heart. What are you putting your heart into? And everyone has some cause, some place where he or she is placing his or her heart. And is your heart really in it? That's as Ramananda Roy said, the heart is the driver of the chariot. Wherever your heart is, that's where you go. In more technical language, like from the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali Muni describes how we are material. We have a material body, and we also have a psychological body. That psychological body he calls the chitta. Caitanya Mahaprabhu says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. It's the same word. You have to clean the chitta. And the chitta really is the aggregate of mind, intelligence, and ego. That's the psychological component of our body, or we call this the subtle body. And as we move about the world, the material world, we take in impressions. And the mind stuff is like a digital cloud that holds on to information. And everything that we experience from the outer world coming in through our senses, City of Nine Gates, the various knowledge gathering senses, when we perceive phenomena from the outside world, it goes into our chitta. It's recorded there, and it leaves an impression. It's like a recording. It's there. So it's also called a samskar. And a samskar is a latent impression that can be activated at any time in a particular circumstance. And there's the combinations and permutations of those impressions that we take in that are from the various modes of material nature make up our particular mindset, our worldview, and everything else, to whom we worship, as Krishna is saying here. And therefore, it's described that when the chitta is full of a particular kind of samskar, as Krishna is categorizing the here as in sattva, rajas, or tamas, then we have a proclivity in a certain way. It's very predictable, actually. That's why psychologists can look at people and say, this is your you have tendencies in this way or that. And we also notice from the way Krishna categorizes people's determination in a particular mode of nature, whatever, if one is in the mode of goodness, then one's very determined. If one's in the mode of passion, one's starts and stops. And if one's in the mode of ignorance, you can never get started. Talk about it a lot, but you never get going, and so forth. So anyway, the shraddha is really an accumulation of our various recorded impressions or samskars when it's materially infected. But then Cheto Darpana Marjanam, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, when those become purified, and how do they become purified? Samskars can be overwritten, just like in computer code. You can overwrite certain types of code with other ones, a different algorithm from spiritual sound vibration. It replaces those. And then, as Prabhupada indicated here, when the consciousness or the chitta is purified, then sattvam vishuddham vasudeva shabditam yadiyate tatra puman apavrita. Lord Shiva said, when the heart is completely clean from those samskars, then one can perceive the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one's faith then becomes aligned in Krishna consciousness, which is the definition of real faith. Shraddha shabde vishwas kahe sudrida nishchoy Krishne bhakti koile sarva karma krita hoy. Real faith is described, or strong faith, that one understands that the ultimate goal of life is Krishna, and that by performing service to Krishna, then all other karmas are done. Whatever else there was to do is subsumed by one's activities in Krishna consciousness, or completed by one's activities in Krishna consciousness. Sarva karma krita hoy, any other kind of karmas, and that's real faith that's being described here. Did that help? Okay. Prabhu?
Yeah. So, you were talking about computers right now?
Computer language, yeah.
Coding and stuff.
Coding, yeah.
Algorithm would then, like the Maha Mantra, then that would be pretty much like what's going to clean your...
Yeah, it'd be like running a, what is that, antiviral disk?
Yeah, McAfee.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's a supreme antiviral program you could run, antiseptic, so that that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who taught about chanting, said, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. When you chant the Hare Krishna mantra, when you do Sankirtan, it cleans the heart. So yeah, sound vibration is what creates the universe, and anavriti shabda. You become contaminated by sound, and you can become uncovered by sound vibration. Yes. We mentioned about association.
Like we have to
Be careful, yes.
for association. So how can you distinguish?
How can we distinguish?
Like if a person is associating with drunkards,
If a person is associating with drunkards,
people who do drugs,
people who do drugs,
but then they say to you, I'm not really associating with them.
they say, I'm not really associating with them.
I'm giving them my association.
I'm giving them my association.
Isn't that a very dangerous position?
Isn't that a very dangerous position?
Because you have a tendency that you might end up
That there's a tendency that you might end up being a drunkard.
like that. Instead of thinking we're so free, oh, I'm here to purify them.
Instead of thinking I'm so free, I'm here to purify them. I'm so pure that I'm here to purify them. Yeah, it can be dangerous.
And
Be
you
careful.
might make one devotee out of that, but isn't that dangerous?
Yeah,
Someone like
the world's dangerous, so one has to be careful. And the first sign of not being careful is thinking that I'm liberated. Because then if I claim I'm liberated, I'm free to move about the country or the world or the universe and associate freely, then I become vulnerable, so I have to be careful. Yes? One more question and I'll read some more. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Somebody else.
No, you're it. The spotlight's on you.
Yeah, no, so in the Prabhupada book, like this really big one.
In the big Prabhupada book?
Yeah. We were reading in there, and he was talking about that about devotees, specifically brahmacharis.
He was reading about, in the book, how brahmacharis specifically
Yeah, that brahmacharis would go out there and associate with materialistic people.
would go out there and associate with
Yeah,
materialistic
but-
people.
And so there is a lot of risk, it says.
So there is a lot of risk.
But the brahmacharis, they risk everything for Krishna.
But they risk everything for Krishna.
So yeah, you can, I guess in a sense, go out there and become materially affected. But
So you
that's the
can go out
risk.
there and become materially affected.
Yeah, but that's the risk that a brahmachari or anybody that's distributing.
But that's the
the word-
risk that brahmachari or anybody else takes.
Yeah, but they're
Well,
distributing for Krishna.
Once somebody mentioned to Prabhupada that Maya is very strong, or was bemoaning the fact that Maya was so strong, and Prabhupada said, it's not that Maya is so strong, it's that you're so weak. Or what he said was, your intention is weak. So it's important that if, for instance, my friend Satyadev Prabhu was a paramedic for 20 years, and he told me that the first teaching lesson they gave him in paramedic school was that a dead paramedic cannot save anyone. And therefore, the first job of a paramedic is to stay alive. When you go into a disaster scene, you got to make sure you don't get shot, electrocuted, drowned, burned, and so forth. So for those who are teaching Krishna consciousness to others, they should assume that it's a dangerous situation. Padam padam yad vipadam. The material world's danger at every step. And be careful. On the other hand, years ago, I remember in the 1970s, somebody started some kind of a algorithm that if you're going around doing Sankirtan and you're shaking hands with people, then you're taking their karma. Do you remember this? And they took it to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said no. Because the devotees are going out, they're giving their association, they're not taking it. Nonetheless, he did advise us constantly to fortify ourselves as we're going out and moving in the world. Because as we know from the Srimad Bhagavatam, even great devas like Lord Shiva shows the example of becoming overwhelmed by Mohini Murti. And this is, or Brahma. So it's extremely likely that one can fall victim to the material nature. In fact, it's mentioned that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that even Balavan Indriya Gramo Vidvam Sam Apikarshati, even if one is a Vidvan, meaning you're highly learned. You say, oh, it won't affect me because I'm highly learned. but the Bhagavatam specifically says even a vidvan is subject to being dragged down. In other words, like, be careful of famous last words, like, that doesn't apply to me, etc. Anything else about the first three? Prabhu?
Yeah, isn't it that there is also a general rule that in Bhagavad Gita Krishna explains that the living entity in this material world follows the ways of nature, and it acquires either evil or good according to what you associate, that you become.
Yes.
So even if you're in the mode of goodness, sometimes thinking that I already made it, but if you're not careful, you can also fall into that.
So Prabhu is calling our attention to the 13th chapter, 22nd verse. It says, Purusha prakriti stohi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sarasadyoni janmasu. The general rule is, as is mentioned by Krishna in this verse, that the reason we get good or bad results in this world, or we end up in good and bad situations in various lives, is because of our previous associations. And probably noticed, but I really appreciated how Prabhupada used the word acquired. He acquires various modes. Can somebody look that word up? Acquire, where it comes from? There's a way that, as we were talking about before, we pick up from our association and from the environment, we acquire various modes of material nature. And then, karanam guna sangosya sarasadyoni janmasu, the cause of our various good and bad situations. Whatever situation you're in now, it's because of previous associations. This is the directive that Krishna gives in the Gita. Okay, Prabhu. On the last point. Since we have to distribute Krishna consciousness.
How to do it without being influenced by the material.
We have to learn to do it without being influenced by the modes of material nature.
It's a great art. Everything with Krishna consciousness is an art.
It's a great art, and we have to learn that art.
We can't give up the preaching mission.
We can't give up the preaching mission.
You just have to learn how to do it right.
Just have to learn to do it right.
That means our sadhana has to be very strong. So
That means our sadhana must be strong.
That's what Prabhupada said, we give our association others rather than taking. You only give your association if you're spiritually strong enough.
You can only give your association if you're spiritually strong enough.
So that's the art. Right?
So that's the art. Thank you, Prabhu, for augmenting that point and being an example of what you're talking about. Now I'm going to go on with the next couple of verses. Ready? Everyone set? Yes? Go. Yajante satvika devan yaksha rakshamsi rajasaha pretan bhuta gunamshchanye yajante tamasa janaha. Men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods, those in the mode of passion worship the demons, and those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. Purport. In this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead describes different kinds of worshippers according to their external activities. According to scriptural injunction, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipable. But those who are not very conversant with or faithful to the scriptural injunctions worship different objects according to their specific situations in the modes of material nature. Those who are situated in goodness generally worship the demigods. The demigods include Brahma, Shiva, and others such as Indra, Chandra, and the sun god. There are various demigods. Those in goodness worship a particular demigod for a particular purpose. Similarly, those who are in the mode of passion worship the demons. We recall that during the Second World War, a man in Calcutta worshipped Hitler because thanks to that war he had amassed a large amount of wealth by dealing in the black market. Similarly, those in the modes of passion and ignorance generally select a powerful man to be God. They think that anyone can be worshipped as God and that the same results will be obtained. Now it is clearly described here that those who are in the mode of passion worship and create such gods, and those who are in the mode of ignorance, in darkness, worship dead spirits. Sometimes people worship at the tomb of some dead man. Sexual service is also considered to be in the mode of darkness. Similarly, in remote villages in India, there are worshippers of ghosts. We have seen that in India, the lower class people sometimes go to the forest, and if they have knowledge that a ghost lives in a tree, they worship that tree and offer sacrifices. These different kinds of worship are not actually God worship. God worship is for persons who are transcendentally situated in pure goodness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 4.3.23, it is said, Sattvam Vishudham Vasudeva Shabditam. When a man is situated in pure goodness, he worships Vasudeva. The purport is that those who are completely purified of the material modes of nature and who are transcendentally situated can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The impersonalists are supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness, and they worship 5 kinds of demigods. They worship the impersonal Vishnu form in the material world, which is known as philosophized Vishnu. Vishnu is the expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the impersonalists, because they do not ultimately believe in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, imagine that the Vishnu form is just another aspect of the impersonal Brahman. Similarly, they imagine that Lord Brahma is the impersonal form in the material mode of passion. Thus, they sometimes describe 5 kinds of gods that are worshipable, but because they think that the actual truth is impersonal Brahman, they dispose of all worshipable objects at the ultimate end. In conclusion, the different qualities of the material modes of nature can be purified through association with persons who are of transcendental nature. Text number 5 and 6. Ashastra vihitam ghoram tapyante ye tapojana dambha hankara samyukta kamaraga balanvita karshayanta sharirastam bhutagramam achetasaha mam chaivanta sharirastam tanvidyasura nishchayan. Those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements of the body as well as the supersoul dwelling within, are to be known as demons. Purport. There are persons who manufacture modes of austerity and penance which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions. For instance, fasting for some ulterior purpose, such as to promote a purely political end, is not mentioned in the scriptural directions. The scriptures recommend fasting for spiritual advancement, not for some political end or social purpose. Persons who take to such austerities are, according to the Bhagavad Gita, certainly demoniac. Their acts are against the scriptural injunctions and are not beneficial for the people in general. Actually, they act out of pride, false ego, and lust and attachment. Actually, they act out of pride, false ego, lust, and attachment for material enjoyment. By such activities, not only is the combination of material elements of which the body is constructed disturbed, but also the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself living within the body. Such unauthorized fasting or austerities for some political end are certainly very disturbing to others. They are not mentioned in the Vedic literature. A demoniac person may think that he can force his enemy or other parties to comply with his desire by this method, but sometimes one dies by such fasting. These acts are not approved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he says that those who engage in them are demons. Such demonstrations are insults to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they are enacted in disobedience to the Vedic scriptural injunctions. The word achetasa is significant in this connection. Persons of normal mental condition, NMC, must obey the scriptural injunctions. Those who are not in such a position neglect and disobey these scriptures and manufacture their own way of austerities and penances. One should always remember the ultimate end of the demoniac people, as described in the previous chapter. The Lord forces them to take birth in the wombs of demoniac persons. Consequently, they will live by demoniac principles life after life without knowing their relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If, however, such persons are fortunate enough to be guided by a spiritual master who can direct them to the path of Vedic wisdom, they can get out of this entanglement and ultimately achieve the supreme goal. Unamas, or 8. Aharas tvapi sarvasya trividho bhavati priya yagnas tapas tata danam tesham bhedam imam shrinu. Even the food each person prefers is of 3 kinds, according to the 3 modes of material nature. The same is true of sacrifices, austerities, and charity. Now hear of the distinctions between them. Purport. In terms of different situations in the modes of material nature, there are differences in the manner of eating and performing sacrifices, austerities, and charities. They are not all conducted on the same level. Those who can understand analytically what kind of performances are in what modes of material nature are actually wise. Those who consider all kinds of sacrifice or food or charity to be the same cannot discriminate, and they are foolish. There are missionary workers who advocate that one can do whatever he likes and attain perfection. But these foolish guides are not acting according to the direction of Scripture. They are manufacturing ways and misleading the people in general. I will take a few more reflections or questions. What did you hear so far that stuck in your mind?
There's a lot of misleading going on.
There's a lot of misleading going on in the world. Yeah.
I thought it was curious how passion is like correlated to demon. Like, why is that?
So the question was, how is it that passion or rajas is correlated with demoniac nature or demons, right? Excuse me one second.
Because, these days you hear, it's like the comments, you gotta find your passion.
You got to find your
Passion's
passion.
like a good thing outside.
I see.
Passion is like, it's not necessarily good or bad, it's just like force, right? Passion is
Well,
like, it's power, right? That's why I see it odd to compare just demonic or demonic, whatever the word is. I'm not sure, sorry, but, or good. Like, how is it construed either way when it's just really a force, right?
right.
In the vain sense, you know, like passion. Like everybody needs money, right, to survive and eat and stuff. But like a passionate person, like they just need more and more and more and more of it, right? Like,
Yeah. There's a way.
you get what I'm saying? Like it could be like blood or something. Passion is doing things differently. I think it's a powerful word. I'll let you.
What is your name?
Luis?
Louis was just describing the nature of the mode of passion, rajas, which is that too much is not enough.
Yeah.
No matter what I get, there's always more.
Never satisfied.
This is based on just in general. Some of the terminologies may bleed over from one culture to the next. So passion doesn't mean enthusiasm. Of course, it can be enthusiasm for the wrong thing. But when we're just in this context, especially in this chapter, when we're talking about passion as related or a definition of the mode of nature, the energy you described of rajas. Rajas is an energy that is based on a misconception that I am the body. I forget that I'm actually a spirit within the body in rajas. And in general, and then of course the word demoniac, we think of somebody with horns or something, you know, and red eyes. And this is another kind of anomalous way of, you know, looking at it necessarily. More in context with the culture itself. Culture which is in harmony with our highest purpose is called dharma. And the nature of our self is that we're spiritual and we're eternal, and actually we're residents within the body. And when we forget about that and become fully consumed in the present body, which includes physical material body, as well as the subtle, or the gross material body and the subtle body, as I described before, the psychological body, and we forget about our ultimate purpose in life and our actual nature, this is what's described as demoniac, because we're squandering an asset. Somebody look up the word demoniac and let's just see what the origins of it is. Look at the etymological root. But really, in the culture, it means you're out of harmony with yourself and you're out of harmony with others in nature. So that's rajas, or what's then described as passion. So if you're a spiritualist and you're just fully invested in your higher spiritual self, you can have passion in the sense of, in fact, you need it, enthusiasm, which is a better word in a sense because entheos means kind of the God within. En means inside and theos means God. Okay, demoniac, a person believed to be possessed by an evil spirit. So in this case, the possession, being possessed is sort of being possessed. Like, have you ever seen or visited a place where people have forgotten who they are? My father was in an Alzheimer's ward, and I used to visit him regularly, and then I saw that everybody there had his or her own shtick. There was a person who was fixing everything, although there was nothing to fix. And then there was other people that imagined themselves to be a guy thought he was a fireman. He was looking for fires around the whole place. And there's this sense of loss of context and identity. And this is a kind of possession, in a sense. We are something. We're something really beautiful and eternal. And when we see that, we're in harmony with others, with our environment, and with our ultimate purpose in life. And when we forget that, we're kind of possessed. Like if somebody takes there's certain kinds of drugs people take, and then they forget who they are, and they sort of go on a rampage. Well, could be hallucinogenics. I don't want to go into any particular drugs at this time, but I know that there are ways, everybody knows, there are ways in which there are certain kinds of drugs in which you hallucinate and you think you're something you're not. And also people become violent, what to speak of non-productive and so forth. So in this mode, rajas, we're kind of intoxicated in a way that I forget who I am, and I act without real care for the environment, for myself, for the ultimate purpose of life, and so forth. And I just become consumed with trying to take care of my comfort in this particular body, and I never quite get there. I'm never quite satisfied. So that's more context for this modality of this energetic force in the world that's described as rajas, and in this book as passion. And so that's why it means we're out of alignment with our higher self. Okay.
You could join it, right? Like make it your passion into something good, like the Kshatriyas, they're in the mode of passion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
It's natural that people we're born in the world with a particular nature, because once you got your body, that's what you get. You get what you get. Like if you get a beaver as a pet and you bring it in your house, it'll start taking your pillows and trying to build a dam somewhere in your house, because it has that nature to build dams, and it just goes for it. And so human beings also have particular natures when they're born. Those obviously, as you mentioned, not obviously, but there's a way in which one can work within the confines of that particular nature one has to make progress spiritually. It means you account for the fact that you do have a particular body, and you have proclivities in life, and then you learn how to engage those in a particular profession that is helpful. For instance, like a violent priest, or let's just say, I mean, it used to be a good example, but after last year it doesn't work so well, but a non-violent policeman. See what I mean? But, it's just like, if you need help and you call a military person or a policeman and they say, sorry, I'm non-violent, I can't protect you. It doesn't work. And so there's a way in which each person who has a particular nature can use it in this world in a particular way. Sorry if I'm unpacking it as if I'm just using you as a persona to unpack things, yeah. So that can be done, and we have two sides to our life, as described by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of the great teachers of bhakti, and he says we have the Paramartika side, which is our ultimate goal, our spiritual goal in life. And then we have another side of our life, which is that we have to live in the world. Despite the fact that one might discover, oh, actually I'm not my body. You still have a body, and you have to maintain it. And if you go for a job somewhere and they ask you in an interview, where are you from? And you say, I'm from the spiritual world, you won't get the job. You'll have to make do somewhere else. So you have to balance the two. Vyavaharika means I work within the confines of the body I've been given, and at the same time I pursue my ultimate spiritual goal in life. Any other reflections or questions?
The origin is Latin.
Okay, so the origin of the word demon, demoniac, it's Latin, and what's the root of it? Daimonium. Which means?
That means demoniac.
Okay. Does it say anything else?
And then it says Latin again, but then it says diamoniacus. And then it says Old French.
Old French?
English.
Okay.
And then it says demoniac, late Middle.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other points? Yes.
Could you say something about, how, because environment obviously will affect all of us, and do we get very limited by the environment?
She's saying that the environment will obviously affects all of us, our environment that we live in, right?
And does that affect us in a way that we kind of trapped within that kind of?
Does that affect us that we're
the environment that we live in?
That we're affected by the environment we live in? Well, if one is a transcendentalist, ostensibly one's not affected by the environment, as presented in the verse from 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narayana parak sarvena kutaschana bhibyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyarta darshina, which means, incidentally, it was spoken by Lord Shiva about Chitraketu, because Chitraketu had just been cursed, basically, to become a demon. And so he didn't mind. And Lord Shiva noted the fact that he didn't mind. He said that whether he goes to Naraka, hell, or to Swarga, heaven, it's Tulya. It's equal for him. Lord Shiva is saying it about Vaishnavas. He's saying they don't care if they're in heaven or hell, because wherever they are, they transform the environment and use it in Krishna service. You can hear in the early times Prabhupada talking about when he's in New York and he first gets some people to talk to, and they're asking him about, why he came to America, and he was saying that his spiritual master asked him to. And he said, actually my home is in Vrindavan. I was happy in Vrindavan, he said. I didn't want to leave Vrindavan, but I have to. It's my duty. I had to leave Vrindavan. And wherever Prabhupada went, he created Vrindavan. I mean, this is Vrindavan here at New Dwarka. It came from Prabhupada's heart. I mean, he manifested it here, and all the devotees that come with it. So a devotee, whether living in heaven or hell, Tulya, it's equal. In fact, we were just reading the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam the other day, that a person who their ultimate object of worship is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who sees all paraphernalia within the material world as objects for engagement in Krishna's service. Such a person is never disturbed, because wherever they look, they just see this is all meant to be engaged in Krishna's service. Having said that, it does make a difference. The environment, it affects our consciousness. Therefore, as mentioned, in the Shastra, the forest is in the mode of goodness. The city is in the mode of passion, and then places like really low energy places like bars and brothels and things like that are in the mode of ignorance. But when Narada, when he was 5 years old, he left home, and then he went through various environments. And Prabhupada mentions there that a transcendentalist should investigate and see how the Lord's energies are working in the world. So Narada was investigating everything. And then where did he end up? In the forest, because it was in the mode of goodness. And he was kind of attracted to it. So then, through the practice of bhakti that he was doing, that he got from the sages, he had a direct experience of seeing Krishna. And overwhelmingly transcendentalized experience. All his senses were spontaneously attracted to Krishna, and he was in ecstasy. But then he came back into the context of his body. And then Krishna spoke to him in an unembodied voice and said, "You're a ku-yogi, bad yogi." Ku-yogi means a bad yogi. He said, because you're still attracted to the forest. You still have a tinge. You're attracted to the mode of goodness. Nonetheless, whenever possible, in order to create an environment conducive to chanting Hare Krishna, devotees try to make the environment as nice as possible. Like here, there's flowers and in Prabhupada's garden. If we sat out on Venice Boulevard, it would be a little more, more difficult to practice devotional service.
Yeah, if you go up like one or two streets this way or this way, it's like a whole different vibe. You guys change this whole place up.
So maybe we'll do it next time. We'll just set these tents up somewhere else and see what happens. Who wants to join in and so forth? Yeah, why not? We can do it. Anything else from the last 3 verses or anywhere else? Yes?
What were you saying about Prabhupada uses this word acquired?
Oh yeah, acquired.
That stands out in my mind.
Yeah, how Prabhupada was mentioning in the first few purports, he used the word acquired, that the soul moving from one body to the next, or even within the context of this one life, acquires various modes of nature. It's an interesting word to use, isn't it? Can somebody look it up? Where's our... okay, please. Acquire. So...
It's like you're picking it up.
Pardon me?
Like
You're picking it up?
You're picking it up.
Yeah, like it's...
Free will, so your minute free will, like that's what you're doing with it.
You with your free will, you're picking it up from the environment.
Acquiring.
Yeah, it does seem like that to me. And so, let's see.
Yeah, it means to get or gain.
To get or gain.
Obtain.
Obtain.
From Old French.
From Old French.
Acquire, gain, earn.
Acquire,
cure.
gain, and cure.
From Modern French.
Modern
And,
French.
Yeah, from Latin.
Latin.
it's To get in addition to.
To get in addition to.
Or accumulate.
Accumulate. There's an etymological dictionary online also. Etymoline it's called.
Yeah.
That's where you are? Okay, thanks.
I remember, Prabhu, that this morning you were asking that what avarice means.
That's right.
That's in the same line.
Yeah.
Over-possessing so many things.
Over-possessing so many things, acquiring so many. Anyway, we're acquiring, and we pick it up. A child up to 7 years of age is recording everything. Eyes are like just video cameras. They're taking in everything of the world, just recording it and storing it, and they're formative times. But in general, living beings are moving about the world, and whatever environment we expose ourselves to, we're taking in that particular a sound vibration. Like a realm actually is defined by the sound vibration within that particular area. Om Bhur Bhuva Swa. Like there are various gradations within the universe, and they're mostly defined by the quality of the sound vibration within them. And therefore, anavriti shabdat, the process of improving oneself has to do with improving the quality of sound vibration that one takes in. In a movie, there's a soundscape. There's a particular soundtrack that defines the movie. If it's a period piece, you have to use, like just say it's from the 60s. All you have to do is play music from the 60s and everyone goes, oh yeah, we're in the 60s. It brings out emotional, there's an emotional reaction just from hearing it. I'm not going to mention any songs because then you'll all feel that emotion come out. Well, probably half of you won't because you weren't born then. So what we choose to listen to is most indicative of how we're acquiring the modes of material nature. So that's one of the most important aspects of bhakti yoga is being very deliberate about acquiring spiritual sound. We talked about that this morning, punya shravana kirtana. When you deliberately hear the Srimad Bhagavatam as an example, you're getting spiritual credit. If you listen to any old thing, then that's what you get. It sticks in there, it stays in. So you have to be careful. Just when I was in Muir Woods, up in Northern California, where we live, one day I was there and I saw one of the rangers was in the stream. There's a beautiful stream that runs through Muir Woods. It's a redwood forest, one of the old growth redwood forests that's left. Most of the redwoods were cut down. This is just a sidebar. Were cut down after the 1904 earthquake. They needed to build back the city, so they cut down all the trees. In any case, he was in the water with gaiters on. That means really long rubber boots. And he had these tongs, and he was pulling something out of the water. And I went over to talk to the ranger and asked him, what do you do? And he said, I'm taking micro trash out from the stream. And I said, so what's with micro trash? And he said, well, you know, people open a package of gum and a little piece of the package flies off somewhere. It all ends up in the stream. He said also people throw in coins into the stream for some kind of good luck or something. In fact, I was in another place in this pristine area and there was a little bridge and it had a sign on it that said, no coins necessary to operate stream. And so the ranger said, actually, and he had studied environmental science, and he said that the microtrash affects the fish. And I said, how so? And it said they're very sensitive to smell, or they have a very sensitive sense of smell. And then he went on to describe how the particular breed of salmon that live in that stream breed there, and then when they get to a certain age, their body starts to change a little bit, and they swim downstream all the way till they get to the ocean. And biologists track some of these fish because they have nothing better to do. And they, sorry if any biologists are here present. And then the fish, they swim sometimes 3,000 miles in various directions in the ocean, away from their homestead. And then a couple years later, they come back to this exact same stream. Then they swim upstream. And you can see this in Alaska, for instance. They make fish bridges so they can make it up. And you just see the fish flying up the stream. Upstream they're going. And they go all the way back to the place where they were born. And then they mate and they die in their homestead. And so I said, so how do they do it? And he said, well, the consensus is on smell. The experiments show that they smell their way back. And he said the microtrash, it interferes with their sense of smelling, where they're from, because it has very distinctive kind of foreign smells that come into their environment, so they can't discern how to get back to their place. So when I heard that and I was walking away, I said, aha, that works for our philosophy. Because actually, although the salmon hear their way, I blew it, smell their way back, we hear our way back to our homestead. This is the presentation in the Vedic scriptures, anavriti shabdat. If you hear the right sound vibration, which sound vibration? The vibration that comes from the spiritual world, then you can triangulate and find your way back to home, back to your homestead by the hearing process. So, coming to the point, if you throw trash in here, little micro trash, like bubblegum songs and just nonsense, things that don't really relate to, they're not from the spiritual world, they're decidedly from this world, then it obscures our sense of hearing the spiritual sound vibration that directs us to go back home, back to the spiritual world. So we have to be careful about what we put in our ears. That's really the homing device that we have, is that the refined sense of hearing. Yes?
What do you mean by the word spiritual world?
What do I mean by the word spiritual world?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
That's a good question. So, there are a couple ways to talk about it. One is that this world that we live in now is not our home. And home is a place where you get to stay, but we're travelers here. We don't get to stay. The word travel comes from the word travail, which means trouble. And the word travail, if you keep going back, it comes from a word that means an instrument of torture. It's a kind of whip that they use. It's got 3 balls on it that when you hit people, it hurts them. So traveling, we're forced to move on in this world. We're in an environment that's foreign to our nature. We're actually spiritual beings, but right now we're in an environment that's temporary, and therefore we feel frustrated because we're incompatible with our environment. It's not our natural environment. It's not our home environment. So there are environments that are purely spiritual. You can experiment and create such an environment here and experience what it feels like to be in a purely spiritual environment. And they're in the and beyond this universe, there are also realms that are fully dedicated to spiritual sound and the practice of spiritual practice, which are completely compatible with us, and that's called the spiritual realm. Did that help? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to read a couple more. Are you ready? Text number 8. Ayu sattva bala rogya sukhapriti vivardhana. Do we have a host that can take care of any? Would you all like to sit down? Oh, okay. Okay. Feel free, make yourselves at home or... Okay, you're welcome. We're just reading are you familiar with Bhagavad Gita? Yes. Okay. I can't tell who's who because I'm not from here, and I also can't see anybody. Foods dear to those in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning are dear to those in the mode of passion. Such foods cause distress, misery, and disease. Foods prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten, food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid, and food consisting of the remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. Purport: the purpose of food is to increase the duration of life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. That's a powerful first sentence. The purpose of food is to increase the duration of life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. This is its only purpose. In the past, great authorities selected those foods that best aid health and increase life's duration, such as milk products, sugar, rice, wheat, fruits, and vegetables. These foods are very dear to those in the mode of goodness. Some other foods, such as baked corn and molasses, while not very palatable in themselves, can be made pleasant when mixed with milk and other foods. They are then in the mode of goodness. All these foods are pure by nature. They are quite distinct from untouchable things like meat and liquor. Fatty foods, as mentioned in the 8th verse, have no connection with animal fat obtained by slaughter. Animal fat is available in the form of milk, which is the most wonderful of all foods. Milk, butter, cheese, and similar products give animal fat in a form which rules out any need for the killing of innocent creatures. It is only through brute mentality that this killing goes on. The civilized method of obtaining needed fat is by milk. Slaughter is the way of subhumans. Protein is amply available through split peas, dal, whole wheat, etc. Foods in the mode of passion, which are bitter, too salty, or too hot, or overly mixed with red pepper, cause misery by reducing the mucus in the stomach, leading to disease. Foods in the mode of ignorance or darkness are essentially those that are not fresh. Any food cooked more than 3 hours before it is eaten, except prasadam, food offered to the Lord, is considered to be in the mode of darkness. Because they are decomposing, such foods give a bad odor, which often attracts people in this mode, but repulses those in the mode of goodness. Remnants of food may be eaten only when they are part of a meal that was first offered to the Supreme Lord, or first eaten by saintly persons, especially the spiritual master. Otherwise, the remnants of food are considered to be in the mode of darkness, and they increase infection or disease. Such foodstuffs, although very palatable to persons in the mode of darkness, are neither liked nor even touched by those in the mode of goodness. The best food is the remnants of what is offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord says that he accepts preparations of vegetables, flour, and milk when offered with devotion. Patram pushpam palam toyam. Of course, devotion and care are the chief things which the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts. But it is also mentioned that the prasadam should be prepared in a particular way. Any food prepared by the injunctions of the scripture and offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be taken even if prepared long, long ago, because such food is transcendental. Therefore, to make food antiseptic, eatable, and palatable for all persons, one should offer food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's very specific information about food, yes.
I thought sugar was a bad guy.
You thought sugar was bad? Well, there are various kinds of sugar, no? Like, I was just in India a long time ago. And you know, in Mayapur, they're making gur. They have a huge, it's almost swimming pool size, vat where they take the palm nectar and they put it in there and they cook it down, and it makes a very natural kind of sugar. But as Prabhu over here was saying, Louis was saying, you know, refined sugar could sometimes be considered a bad guy, depending on where it's obtained.
Like one's like an actual literal poison, right? Like aspartame or whatever?
Aspartame is something chemical, no? Yeah. It's an artificial sweetener. Any other thoughts about food?
Well,
Yes, Prabhu.
you know, we mentioned about milk being the best food.
Milk being the best food?
What about milk that's coming from unprotected cows?
Let's add it to the list of controversial topics that I'll bring up wherever I go. Ahimsa. Sure. Ahimsa is mentioned by Patanjali. He said it's the foundational point of all the yamas and niyamas, ahimsa, which is that it's like the footprint of the elephant. It covers all the other aspects of yamas and niyamas. Ahimsa, not doing violence to others, is an important principle. It can be moved, it can be very helpful, should be moved to the front as much as possible. Just my personal feeling about it is that it's not a bad idea to protect cows. It's mentioned here, there, and everywhere. And I just see whenever anybody goes to the effort of protecting cows in any way, shape, or form, that something good comes out of it. And oftentimes, Krishna gives more facility. If you just try a little bit, you don't have to knock yourself out or change everything all at once, but if you at least try for it, then stuff happens. Like up and around where we live, several years ago, I just introduced that we really like to try to have ahimsa milk as much as possible. And then we started finding sources, because as soon as you have an objective, then it helps. You know, you start becoming aware of where they're available. Either that or Krishna starts helping to supply, you know. Did that help? And was my answer sufficiently non-controversial? You didn't say yes or no. Is all right? Okay. Any other things? Yes, Prabhu.
How is it, when is this time, when we start to advance a little bit, and we start to maybe realize I can eat much less, and I still have power, you know, to do service. So
when is it time to eat much less?
Yeah, you know, how you judge this time, you know, in Chaitanya Charitamrita is explained that
to eat less.
Prabhupada said, try to, you know, more.
Yeah, well, Prabhupada said nobody. He said nobody ever died from eating less. He said most people die from diseases from eating more. And in Los Angeles, people say you can never be too skinny or too rich. You didn't know that? That's an old one from Los Angeles. Well, the guidance was given by Prabhupada in the very beginning of the purport, where he said, and I'll repeat, the purpose of food is to increase the duration of life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. This is its only purpose. So if you're Bhima, then you have a wolf belly. That's his name, Vrikadar. So he had to eat a lot to do his jujitsu and all the other martial arts that he did. And if you're, you know, doing bhajan somewhere, like our godbrother Parvat Maharaj, who lives in, you know, Loki, who lives in Vrindavana, when he stayed at Satyadev's house for a while to get his, this was a long time ago, to get his visa. He's just doing chanting all day long. When the family went to bed at night, he was chanting, and when they woke up in the morning, he was still chanting, just sitting there. He came in their house and he set up his Govardhan Shila on their television. So that was it for the television, you know. And then, and what did he eat? He ate a sweet potato and a little avocado. That was it. Simple diet for a sadhu. But if you're running around Walmart parking lots and stuff like that, you might need a little more. I remember back in Denver, I was with Prem Kishore, Kashi Ram, and a few other devotees, and we thought we were the 6 Goswamis. And so we started eating once a day, and all we ate was, they were pretty opulent, but they were just puffies. And we said, you know, now's the time. We were probably in our 30s, and it's like, or younger, 20s. We were in our 20s and said, now's the time to cut down on sleep and on eating. We'll eat once a day and so forth. And we got, at least I got really skinny. And I couldn't maintain it, that kind of thing. So you have to, as Prabhupada says here, when you eat, it's for fuel. So you have to make sure yukta haraviharasya, yukta cheshasya karmasu, yukta swapna vibodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. Don't eat too much and don't eat too little. See what I'm saying? Okay. A couple more Gita verses, all right? And then I'm going to read you a story. Okay. Apala kankshibir yagno vidi dishto yajite yashtavyam evati mana samadaya sasatvika. Of sacrifices, the sacrifice performed according to the directions of Scripture as a matter of duty by those who desire no reward is of the nature of goodness. Report. The general tendency is to offer sacrifice with some purpose in mind, but here it is said that sacrifice should be performed without any such desire. It should be done as a matter of duty. Take, for example, the performance of rituals in temples or in churches. Generally, they are performed with the purpose of material benefit, but that is not in the mode of goodness. One should go to a temple or church as a matter of duty, offer respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and offer flowers and eatables, without any purpose of obtaining material benefit. Everyone thinks that there is no use in going to the temple just to worship God. I can repeat that because it's so profound, actually. It's simple but profound. Everyone thinks that there is no use in going to the temple to worship God. But worship for economic benefit is not recommended in the scriptural injunctions. One should go simply to offer respect to the deity. That will place one in the mode of goodness. It is the duty of every civilized man to obey the injunctions of the scriptures and offer respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 12. But the sacrifice, abhisandaya tu palam, dam bharatam apichai vigyat, ijite bharata shreshta tam yajnam, vidi rajasam. But the sacrifice performed for some material benefit or for the sake of pride, O chief of the Bharatas, you should know to be in the mode of passion. Purport. Sometimes sacrifice and rituals are performed for elevation to the heavenly kingdom or for some material benefits in this world. Such sacrifices or ritualistic performances are considered to be in the mode of passion. 13. Vidihinam ashishtanam mantrahinam adakshinam shraddha virahitam yagnam tamasam parichakshite. Any sacrifice performed without regard for the directions of Scripture, without distribution of prasadam, spiritual food, without chanting of Vedic hymns and remunerations to the priests, and without faith, is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. Purport. Faith in the mode of darkness or ignorance is actually faithlessness. Sometimes people worship some demigod just to make money and then spend the money for recreation, ignoring the scriptural injunctions. Such ceremonial shows of religiosity are not accepted as genuine. They are all in the mode of darkness. They produce a demoniac mentality and do not benefit human society. Deva Dvija Guru Prajna Pujanam Shaucham Arjavam Brahmacharyam Ahimsa Cha Shariram Tapa Uchite. Is everyone okay? Okay? Austerity of the body consists in worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master, and superiors like the father and mother, and in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and nonviolence. Purport. The Supreme Godhead here explains the different kinds of austerity and penance. He first explains the austerities and penances practiced by the body. One should offer or learn to offer respect to God or to the demigods, the perfect, qualified brahmanas, and the spiritual master, and superiors like father, mother, or any person who is conversant with Vedic knowledge. What are those? You should show respect to? Elders, yeah. Father, mother. Teacher. Demigods. spiritual master, brahmanas, or anyone conversant in spiritual knowledge. In Vedic knowledge, with Vedic knowledge. These should be given proper respect. One should practice cleansing oneself externally and internally, and he should learn to become simple in behavior. He should not do anything which is not sanctioned by the scriptural injunctions. He should not indulge in sex outside of married life, for sex is sanctioned in the scripture only in marriage, not otherwise. This is called celibacy. These are penances and austerities as far as the body is concerned. Austerity of speech. Anuvega karam vakyam satyam priya hitam chayat. Swadhyaya bhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapuuchite. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. You're going to love the purport. Here we go. One should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. Of course, when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the instruction of his students, but such a teacher should not speak to those who are not his students if he will agitate their minds. This is penance as far as talking is concerned. Besides that, one should not talk nonsense. The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by the scriptures. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to hear, to the ear. By such discussions, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society. There is a limitless stock of Vedic literature, and one should study this. This is called penance of speech. Isn't that a nice purport?
Yeah.
So, Prabhu, go ahead. Luis?
Prabhupada, I don't know where I heard this. Maybe you can help me, but doesn't he
He's
say
saying-
that some monks take vows of silence?
Yeah, it's in chapter 4.
Yeah, real silence is the lack of talking
About
nonsense or something like that.
vows of silence is not to talk nonsense. So one important trick for advancing a spiritual life is to not say everything that's on your mind. Because there's a lot that comes into the mind, and if we follow this austerity and get used to analyzing that, not saying it, or especially writing it, and especially not in social media, because then it's like irretractable. Or even if you speak it to somebody, then it's really hard to take back. So I'm observing in myself, just the practicing the discipline doesn't always work, but I notice it that things come into my mind and I say, I could bring it up, but why? What good is it? How is it going to be beneficial to somebody else if I say this thing? And when I don't say it, then I experience a kind of peace of mind. And I start to actually see the difference between myself and my mind. Because I'm noticing that there are all these urges of the mind to say something, and then I don't have to vocalize them. And there's a way in which the desires are described in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. There are various chakras within the body, and they percolate upwards until they come to the voice box. And they means there are various desires and thoughts that come up, and they become grossified as they come higher into the towards the voice box, and then they actually take a physical form by speech. There are syllables, and it becomes manifest in the world by saying it. So is that what you want to manifest? Yes.
What did you just say? That was so good.
Well, in the Bhagavatam, Partrikananda, I was wondering where you were. Hare Krishna. In the Bhagavatam, there's a discussion. I mean, Krishna is mostly discussing with Uddhava there, but he talks about how there are a progression of different kinds of sounds. Sound vibration is the origin of all creation in this world. And so Prabhupada describes this in the 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam. We create everything around us by the sound vibration that we make. And he gives the example, if you want to build a skyscraper building, what you do is you start talking about it. You don't make cement. God makes cement. And you don't make rebarb. It's made by God. It comes from, it's His energies. Bhumiraparana vayu. But you can put together all those ingredients that are already manifest in the world by your speech. So Prabhupada gives this example. You start talking about, okay, we're going to build a building. And so, all right, what's it going to be like? 3 stories. It'll have a reception center at the bottom. Placed, I don't know, what else is in it, Savas? We build it right now, let's just talk about it and it'll manifest. So you start talking about it and it's actually someone will raise their hands like, well, my uncle has some rebarb and he'll bring it over. I mean, in devotee circles, that's how everything manifests. You just say like, we'd like to build a temple and something, I'll help. And you just so there are various levels of the vibration of speech described in the Bhagavatam that come up through the various chakras of the body, and then they're ultimately manifest through the voice box, which is a chakra in and of itself. So you can also purify the chakras in the body by the process of chanting the Maha Mantra. Then that reverses the process of material desires just coming up and out of the voice box. Then you preempt that material vibration that you might have spoken by speaking spiritual sound vibration. I can say more about it if you wish, but
sound vibration.
Sound vibration.
In general, sometimes if we're not very trained or educated properly, we think that everyone who speaks nice and softly and soothing.
Sometimes we think that if somebody speaks nicely and sweetly, then.
Okay, then I was analyzing that there is time, place, and circumstance, and depends who speaks.
There's time, place, and circumstances.
Sometimes
and depends who's speaking.
Srila Prabhupada, in order to correct someone, especially when someone
sometimes to correct somebody, Srila Prabhupada,
who says, I'm God.
Someone would say, I'm God.
And we heard that many times, like he would raise his voice.
And Prabhupada would raise his voice.
Or sometimes also we heard stories where Srila Prabhupada among his peers, God brothers.
And sometimes Prabhupada amongst his peers, God brothers.
There was some raising of the voice to each other.
There was some raising of the voice to each other.
To settle
some differences.
So not all the time can be necessary.
Not all the time does it just mean that you.
Like pleasing to the ear if we don't have.
That is pleasing to the ear if you don't have the right training.
To see when is the time when we actually apply.
To say when is the right time to apply it. Well, there's a good example of that in Giriraj Maharaj's new book about the Juhu project, and in one section, the devotees were living on the property, and Prabhupada goes to visit their rooms to see how they're living. And he visits the room of, who was that? Banabhata's brother? Jagapurusha Prabhu. And it was perfectly neat and tidy. Like you think, door was locked, Prabhupada open it up, looks in, everything in place. How good does that feel, right? He didn't know Prabhupada was coming either. So then Prabhupada was looking around, satisfied, but then he started to walk up these stairs, and the devotee said, "Oh, Prabhupada, don't go up there, the stairs aren't safe." And Prabhupada went up anyway. And he looked, and there were books up there that had, they were rotting. They had been left up there in a damp environment, and they had been infested with some worms or something like that. And Prabhupada was furious. And so he severely chastised the devotees with his speech. Nobody was spared actually. But then the devotees were afraid to go to the darshan that night with Prabhupada because they thought he'll still be furious. We got in, he didn't bring it up, and he was back in the mode that he was usually for darshan. And so the terminology that the devotee who described it, which may have been Jagat Purush, he said it was instructive anger. And there's a difference between losing your temper and using your temper. But it's, for most people, it's hard to tell the difference, so you got to be careful. Because you just lose your temper and say, yeah, I offer that to Vishnu. That was for the purpose. One thing that I find very interesting in this purport is that one should be careful about instructing people who don't sign up for it. Don't go around giving free advice unless somebody said, I'm signing up to learn from you. And even then you should be careful, because everyone has different natures, and you can't just take it for granted that you can speak in any old way and then it'll be effective. And especially just offering free advice to people who didn't ask you about it. It's not very well taken. Like, try going and instructing your parents sometime and tell them, well, let me tell you all about what life's really about, and see how receptive they are. Because the relationship's wrong. It doesn't work unless they surrender to you and say, you tell me, and now I'll listen. And that happens sometimes, but we have to wait for that in order to use our speech properly to instruct people. Any last things about? Yes. Prabhu. Oh, good.
Basically, just go back to what you were saying about not disturbing people.
Yeah, so Luis is bringing up a point going back to about not disturbing people. Yes.
Right now, to not bring it up to people that didn't sign up for it.
Yeah.
That involves not disturbing people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Any other things, Prabhu?
Sometimes when we might be having a disagreement with someone.
Sometimes we might be having a disagreement with somebody.
We might be looking our memory, or looking up Shastra to back up.
We might be looking for Shastra to back up what we said.
So how do we maybe protect ourselves from maybe taking it too far?
How do we protect ourselves from taking it too far? Means taking
Or our argument, or our side of the story.
Our argument, our side of the story. Well, I was just actually talking to a godbrother about this recently. About, let's just say, if somebody who's very argumentative wants to criticize or bring up something about you, then his recommendation, and I respected his opinion, was you might write something to put the record straight, but then don't get in a prolonged argument about it. Devotees aren't argumentative, actually. This is one of the principles Rupa Goswami mentions, is don't be argumentative. We don't get into shastric debates necessarily just to be argumentative, but to be didactic, to preach something, to teach something. And if you find yourself in an environment where it is too combative, then there may be more effective ways to express the philosophical point you're trying to bring to somebody. Like, I read this book about debate by a professor at New York University. It's called How to Win an Argument. And he had a section about how to deal with fanatics. And I can pass on to you the teachings that he gave. Shall I do that? Don't. Because fanatics have a simplistic way of looking at the world. There's just one way, and there's no other nuance. When you read, for instance, the commentaries of Sanatana Goswami, he's famous for giving multiple options in Siddhanta. If you read his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see he said, it could be like this, or it could be like that, or others say it's like this. He'll go on 5, 6, 7 times giving different options. And one of the definitions of intelligence is being able to hold opposing views and accommodate them within your mind. That doesn't exactly answer your question, but I think that the real test is found when one asks oneself, what's my goal in arguing here? And this is one of the points that this professor brought up. He said people argue all the time and they forget what they're arguing about. This is a very common point when there's a debate going on and they're arguing, and it goes off long time ago in a different direction. And you go, wait a minute, what was this about anyway? We're not really accomplishing the point. Brigu Prabhu.
Isn't there some sort of like really famous story involving Rupa Goswami?
There's a famous story involving Rupa Goswami.
Where he declined to engage to in a debate or something like that with some scholar that was trying to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there was a story about there were professional debaters who used to go around and just challenge everybody, and they had a little scorecard they would keep. It was an app, I think, and then they, whenever they defeat somebody, then they'd enter it into the app and it would go on a spreadsheet somewhere. And so that's what they did, pretty much professionally, and people would, give them donations and stuff like that. Go get them, And so when he came to Vrindavan, he wanted to debate with Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, and they just signed his little app and said, hey, if you want to say you won, go ahead. And so, as the story goes, Jiva Goswami, their nephew, didn't like that. Not that he didn't like what his uncles did, but he didn't like the audacity of this person who came to town and presented the argument. So Jiva went after him philosophically and soundly defeated him, ripped him to shreds because he could do that. And then when Rupa found out about it, he banished Jiva Goswami from Vrindavan. He said, you're not a Vaishnav, and this is not what Vaishnavas do. And he made him go out of Vrindavan and live elsewhere for some time as a punishment. He was very angry at him. That's a big punishment, really. And then so many people were coming and begging for him to come back, and Sanatan Goswami then went to speak to Rupa on behalf of Jiva. And Rupa had written a verse about saving the Jivas. Pardon me? Jivadoy. Jivadoy Krishnanam Sarvadharmasar. So, showing mercy, Jivadoya, showing mercy to the Jivas. And that this was Caitanya Mahaprabhu's mission statement. So Sanatan came and said to Rupa Goswami something that was would be unconscionable for Rupa to hear or to feel that he had perpetrated, and that was that you've gone against Mahaprabhu's teaching. And he said, what is that? And he said, Jivadoya. You should show mercy to Jiva. It meant the Jivas, but in this case it was double purpose. So he went and he forgave him and he brought him back. But that story stands to show that there is a way in which devotees generally avoid being argumentative. Of course, Prabhupada urged us to stand up for philosophical purposes and causes, for even in science and so forth, and against Mayavadis, and many of our acharyas do also. But you want to make sure that you're doing it in ways that will be helpful, ultimately. And not just arguing for the sake of arguing. Okay, now I promised a story, so you want to hear a story? Yeah. Okay. You want to stand up for a minute first? Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Short intermission kirtan. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto. Chapter number 9. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is just after Markandeya Rishi had seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his ashrama and offered his prayers. Sutta Goswami said, the Supreme Lord Narayan, the friend of Nara, was satisfied by the proper glorification offered by the intelligent sage Markandeya. Thus the Lord addressed that excellent descendant of Bhrigu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Markandeya, you are indeed the best of all learned brahmanas. You have perfected your life by practicing fixed meditation upon the Supreme Soul, as well as by focusing upon me, your undeviating devotional service, your austerities, your study of the Vedas, and your strict adherence to regulative principles. We are perfectly satisfied with your practice of lifelong celibacy. Please choose whatever benediction you desire, since I can grant your wish. May you enjoy all good fortune. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the Lord used the plural form in the beginning of this verse, we are satisfied, because he was referring to himself along with Shiva and Uma, who will later be glorified by Markandeya. The Lord then used the singular, I am the bestower of benedictions, because ultimately only Lord Narayan, Krishna, can award the highest perfection of life, eternal Krishna consciousness. Text 4. The sage said, O Lord of Lords, all glories to you. O Lord Achyuta, you remove all distress for the devotees who surrender unto you. That you have allowed me to see you is all the benediction I want. Such demigods as Lord Brahma achieved their exalted positions simply by seeing your beautiful lotus feet after their minds had become mature in yoga practice. And now, my Lord, you have personally appeared before me. Purport. Markandeya Rishi points out that exalted demigods like Lord Brahma achieved their positions simply by glimpsing the Lord's lotus feet, and yet Markandeya Rishi was now able to see Lord Krishna's entire body. Thus, he could not even imagine the extent of his good fortune. O lotus-eyed Lord, O crushed jewel of renowned personalities, although I am satisfied simply by seeing you, I do wish to see your illusory potency, by whose influence the entire world, together with its ruling demigods, consider reality to be materially variegated. Purport. A conditioned soul sees the material world to be constituted of independent, separate entities. Actually, all things are united, being potencies of the Supreme Lord. Markandeya Rishi is curious to witness the exact process by which Maya, the Lord's bewildering potency, casts living beings into illusion. Sutta Goswami said, O wise Shaunaka, thus satisfied by Markandeya's praise and worship, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, smiling, replied, so be it, and then departed for his hermitage at Dvaraka Ashrama. Purport. The words Bhagavan and Ishvara in this verse refer to the Supreme Lord in his incarnation as the twin sages Nara and Narayan. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Supreme Lord smiled ruefully because he prefers that his pure devotees stay away from his illusory energy. Curiosity to see the illusory energy of the Lord sometimes develops into sinful material desire. Nonetheless, to please his devotee Markandeya, the Lord granted his request, just as a father who cannot convince his son to give up pursuing a harmful desire may let him experience some painful reaction so that he will then voluntarily desist. Thus, understanding what would soon happen to Markandeya, the Lord smiled as he prepared to display the illusory potency to him. thinking always of his desire to see the Lord's illusory energy. The sage remained in his ashrama, meditating constantly upon the Lord within fire, the sun, the moon, water, the earth, air, lightning, and his own heart, and worshipping him with paraphernalia conceived in his mind. But sometimes, overwhelmed by waves of love for the Lord, Markandeya would forget to perform his regular worship. Purport: it is apparent from these verses that Markandeya Rishi was a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Therefore he wanted to see the illusory energy of the Lord, not to fulfill some material ambition, but to learn how his potency is working. O Brahmana Shaunaka, best of the Brigus, one day, while Markandeya was performing his evening worship on the bank of the Pushpabhadra, a great wind suddenly arose. That wind created a terrible sound and brought in its wake fearsome clouds that were accompanied by lightning and roaring thunder, and that poured down on all sides torrents of rain as heavy as wagon wheels. Then the four great oceans appeared on all sides, swallowing up the surface of the earth with their wind-tossed waves. In these oceans were terrible sea monsters, fearful whirlpools, and ominous rumblings. The sage saw all the inhabitants of the universe, including himself, tormented within and without by the harsh winds, the bolts of lightning, and the great waves rising beyond the sky. As the whole earth flooded, he grew perplexed and fearful. Here the words Chaturvidam refers to the four sources of birth for conditioned souls: embryos, eggs, seeds, and perspiration. Even as Markandeya looked on, the rain pouring down from the clouds filled the ocean more and more, until that great sea, its waters violently whipped into terrifying waves by hurricanes, covered up all the earth's islands, mountains, and continents. The water inundated the earth, outer space, heaven, and the celestial region. Indeed, the entire expanse of the universe was flooded in all directions, and out of its inhabitants only Markandeya remained. His matted hair scattered, the great sage wandered about alone in the water, as if dumb and blind. Tormented by hunger and thirst, attacked by monstrous makaras and timangila fish, and battered by the wind and waves, he moved aimlessly through the infinite darkness into which he had fallen. As he grew increasingly exhausted, he lost all sense of direction and could not tell the sky from the earth. At times he was engulfed by the great whirlpools. Sometimes he was beaten by the mighty waves, and at other times the aquatic monsters threatened to devour him as they attacked one another. Sometimes he felt lamentation, bewilderment, misery, happiness or fear, and at other times he experienced such terrible illness and pain that he felt himself dying. Countless millions of years passed as Markandeya wandered about in that deluge, his mind bewildered by the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once, while wandering in the water, the Brahmana Markandeya discovered a small island upon which stood a young banyan tree bearing blossoms and fruits. Upon a branch of the northeast portion of that tree, he saw an infant boy lying within a leaf. The child's effulgence was swallowing up the darkness. The infant's dark blue complexion was the color of a flawless emerald. His lotus face shone with a wealth of beauty, and his throat bore marks like the lines on a conch shell. He had a broad chest, a finely shaped nose, beautiful eyebrows, and lovely ears that resembled pomegranate flowers, and that had inner folds like a conch shell's spirals. The corners of his eyes were reddish like the whorl of a lotus, and the effulgence of his coral-like lips slightly reddened the nectarian, enchanting smile on his face. As he breathed, his splendid hair trembled, and his deep navel became distorted by the moving folds of skin on his abdomen, which resembled a banyan leaf. The exalted Brahmana watched with amazement as the infant took hold of one of his lotus feet with his graceful fingers, placed a toe within his mouth, and began to suck. Purport. The young child was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Krishna wondered, "So many devotees are hankering for the nectar of my lotus feet. Therefore, let me personally experience that nectar." Thus the Lord, playing like an ordinary baby, began to suck on his toes. As Markandeya beheld the child, all his weariness vanished. Indeed, so great was his pleasure that the lotus of his heart, along with his lotus eyes, fully blossomed, and the hairs on his body stood on end. Confused as to the identity of the wonderful infant, the sage approached him. Purport. Markandeya wanted to ask the child about his identity and therefore approached him. Just as the child inhaled, drawing Markandeya within his body like a mosquito, there the sage found the entire universe arrayed as it had been before its dissolution. Seeing this, Markandeya was most astonished and perplexed. The sage saw the entire universe, the sky, heavens and earth, the stars, mountains, oceans, great islands and continents, the expanses in every direction, the saintly and demoniac living beings, the forests, countries, rivers, cities and mines, the agricultural villages and cow pastures, and the occupational and spiritual activities of the various social divisions. He also saw the basic elements of creation, along with all their byproducts, as well as time itself, which regulates the progression of countless ages within the days of Brahma. In addition, he saw everything else created for the use in material life, created for use in material life. All this he saw manifest before him as if it were real. He saw before him the Himalaya mountains, the Pushpabhadra river, and his own hermitage, where he had had the audience of the sages Nara Narayan. Then, as Markandeya beheld the entire universe, the infant exhaled, expelling the sage from his body and casting him back into the ocean of dissolution. In that vast sea, he again saw the banyan tree growing on the tiny island and the infant boy lying within the leaf. The child glanced at him from the corner of his eyes with a smile imbued with the nectar of love, and Markandeya took him into his heart through his eyes. Greatly agitated, the sage ran to embrace the transcendental personality of Godhead. At that moment, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original master of all mysticism and who is hidden within everyone's heart, became invisible to the sage, just as the achievements of an incompetent person can suddenly vanish. After the Lord disappeared, O Brahmana, the banyan tree, the great water, and the dissolution of the universe all vanished as well. And in an instant, Markandeya found himself back in his own hermitage, just as before. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 12th canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Markandeya Rishi Sees the Illusory Potency of the Lord. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. How did that make you feel? What did you think of that story?
Amazing.
Yeah? What's amazing about it?
Because it just kind of tears open the veil.
It tears open the veil.
The veil that covers the reality.
The veils that covers the reality. Yeah. There's kind of a parallel there near the end where it says it catalogs the various elements of the world and then mentions, he saw it as if they were real. And in the very beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Teni Brahmahridaya Adikaveya Muhyanti Yatsurayaha, that even the great devas are bewildered, and that the forms of the world that look like solids are actually liquid. He's a magician. He can transform everything from one state to another. And whatever I take as being reality is just the play of the energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What other thoughts did it invoke?
Well, if he had it to do over again, do you think?
If he had to do it over again, would he do it? Well, I can tell you a personal story. I was in Vrindavana once with a very senior godbrother of mine that I always liked to travel with, at least in the old days. And then we were standing under a Kalpavriksha tree, apparently, and he told me, "This is a Kalpavriksha tree." And I said, "Dear Lord Krishna, please show me things as they are." And about 2 days later, I got sicker than I had ever been, and I lost weight so fast from. Anyway, I won't go into the details, but I recovered actually pretty quickly, but it was daunting to say the least, and I mean my shoes barely even fit after that. I lost so much weight so fast, and then I hadn't seen my godbrother for a few days, and then he said, "What happened to you?" and everything. I told him I got so sick, and he said, "Well, how'd you get sick?" I said, "We were standing under that tree," and I said, "Please show me things as they are." And then I got so sick. He said, "You don't pray for that. You pray for prema bhakti." So I changed my prayer. I never say that anymore. It's like, "Please show me things as they are." I remember Markandeya Rishi and my time in Vrindavana, and I just said, "Please, may I have prema bhakti." Instruction from my senior godbrother. Careful what you ask for, right? And then Krishna was rueful when he smiled ruefully when he heard him ask for that. Didn't think it was a great idea for his devotees to cohort with the material energy. Any other thoughts? Yes, Prabhu?
Yeah, that story also reminds me one verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam.
The story reminds him of a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam.
The verse is the Lord Brahma and the Lord Krishna talks. Narayana talks to Lord Brahma.
Narayana talks to Lord Brahma.
He says, "Rityarthan yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidya atmanomaya yatavaso yatatamaha."
He says, "Rityartam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidyat atmanomaya yatabhaso yatatama." Go ahead.
Whatever appears to be of any reality is without me. It's not.
Whatever appears to be in reality but it doesn't have a relationship to me, know that to be my illusory potency.
Yes. And it should be considered like my illusory energy.
This is considered my illusory energy. He has a really good application, which is born of ignorance. Prabhu, are you raising your hand?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes.
So it was very significant. It was saying that this was happening millions of years.
It was significant. It was saying that it lasted for millions of years.
And then when he saw Krishna on that island, and I was contemplating that only Krishna can break down this illusion of.
And then when he saw Krishna on the island, he had this realization that only Krishna can
break down the illusion for us.
Can break down the illusion for us.
Yes,
Yeah.
Only Krishna can get out. He actually, that's what Lord's first smile, but then he's the one who also got him out of the thing.
Yes. Yeah, the Lord arranged it, and then he can take us out of it too.
Yes.
That is a very powerful point. Thank you. Prabhu?
I was just thinking of being in a traveling Sankirtan.
He was just thinking of being in a traveling Sankirtan van
with Parameshwar Prabhu.
with Parameshwar Prabhu.
And he talks about how, sometimes chanting japa in the van
sometimes chanting japa in the van.
You're undergoing a lot of purification.
You're undergoing a lot of
And,
purification.
you're with the same people for months on end.
With the same people for months on
coming
end.
out.
Anarthas are coming out.
And it's like you're in a hurricane. Everything's being thrown everywhere.
It's like you're in a hurricane, everything's being thrown everywhere.
But in the
Anybody want to go on traveling Sankirtan?
but then in the eye of the hurricane.
But then in the eye of the hurricane
Is attentive chanting and hearing.
is
the holy
attentive hearing and chanting the holy name.
name. And that's the calm within the storm.
And that's the calm
And
within the
If you can
storm.
get to the eye of the hurricane,
If you can get within the eye of the
you can go
hurricane,
beyond the mess.
then you can go beyond the mess.
So I was thinking about that when Markandeya Rishi,
I was thinking about that when Markandeya Rishi,
he was being tossed and thrown around in that ocean,
he was being tossed and thrown around in that ocean,
and then he saw Krishna.
and then he saw Krishna.
That was like the eye of the hurricane.
And that was the eye of the hurricane. I think it probably can be extended to most of our lives, besides even just the Sankirtan van. Does anybody in a home feel like they're in the eye of a hurricane? Or not in the eye necessarily, but in a hurricane? As any place we are, it could feel like that with friction in our association perhaps, and then there could be also just the way things are thrown about in our lives. Things we have or thought we had, and they get moved around, but it's apt advice anywhere to be centered like that. We were just reading earlier during breakfast about I think it was during breakfast, but Prabhupada was talking about the ashrama, how important it is to be in an ashrama. Shrama means labor for nothing, working hard for nothing, like shrama evahi kevalam, the verse. And ashrama means being in a situation where you're not working for nothing. Your work is actually productive for your life. And you have to take shelter in some ashrama situations so that you can have that experience that you're in the eye of the storm. Noteworthy in Giriraj Swami's new book about Bombay and its development, the devotees at one point were going every day for life membership making. It's a hyphenated word. And he said that Prabhupada, they had a rented apartment. It was closer to town where they could do their work. And Prabhupada then visited them and saw that they were staying out late, getting up a little late in the morning, and going out all day for their life membership making. And then he asked them about their morning program, and they didn't have one. And then Prabhupada said that this is karma kanda. He said you have to have your morning program. Otherwise, he said that going on with this kind of work without your morning program, he said you'll just come into eating and sleeping, and it'll just become a regular material activity. You'll be making money. And even though the Lakshmi was being collected for developing the Juhu project and everything, Prabhupada pushed so hard for that to have the morning program and insisted. I was thinking how for most people the four regulative principles or the idea of a morning, especially an early morning program, is onerous. It's beyond comprehension how they would accommodate that in their life, especially if they grew up in a different environment. But it was so merciful for Prabhupada to insist upon it, because without that minimum base, it's very difficult to make any spiritual advancement. And what to speak of if, like today is a very cruel environment, the way the economic system is forcing people to work so hard. Even if they make a lot of money, it's draining people's life energy by working inordinately hard to stay in a job. And if you don't have the base program of hearing and chanting, then it just becomes shrama rather than ashrama. You're nodding your head very enthusiastically. Any comment? Okay.
I was wondering if you could tell the other story about the Brahmana or Narada Muni.
Tell the story of Narada and the Brahmana.
The energy of the Lord. Maya.
Oh. Yeah. No, I don't know that story very well. Can't tell it. And now we're finished. right? Looks like it's over. Anyway, how did you like this format, the Naimasharanya? It was okay? A good sitting out here on the grass? If we were in Vaikuntha, we get 4 thumbs up. He'll be here all week. What was it like, the experience of just having some time to hear and chant? Prabhu?
I was a little bit busy today just due to some duties I had.
He said he was busy, a little bit busy today because of duties he had, but
when I was able to be here,
when he was able to be here,
I felt like I was back in Govardhan reading with you.
Felt like he was back in Govardhan reading with Keshav Bharti Maharaj.
And yourself.
And me.
And I was just thinking how you brought the mood that exists in that time and space, and it's a really rarefied environment.
Said we were able to duplicate the mood in that from that time and space. Transporting. Yeah, it's a kind of somebody was mentioning earlier how Prabhupada gave us the wherewithal to create the spiritual atmosphere anywhere. It's just a matter of application. And it doesn't really, anywhere we are, we can come together for hearing and chanting. And we can make it a variety, and then it becomes, we're transported to that place. Yeah, thanks. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Igualmente. Hare Krishna. Yes?
Yeah, especially the first reading you did from...
Especially the first reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Because it was just the same like going on parikrama.
It was like going on parikrama.
To all those holy places.
To all the holy places in Vrindavan.
Remembering the atmosphere.
And remembering the atmosphere. The visuals, the beautiful scenes.
And also how we feel when we're in that environment.
How we feel when we're in the environment. I felt that way too. And the reason I changed it up was I just wanted to, if we had like a week or a month, just do this every day, and then, we go through maybe one whole section. Like when we do it at Govardhan, we'll pick a few cantos, or we'll say 2 full cantos, and then we'll read the Krishna book too, or something like that. And then we stay on track for a certain number of pages to go to make sure we finish a complete section. But today, because it was just one day and 2 parts, thought a variety would be nice. And probably you're here for the first time. He just walked in today to this environment, so I wanted to read a little Bhagavad Gita also, right? He just got a Bhagavad Gita for the first time today. So I tried to change it up a little bit. Well, yeah, thank you for being here. It made it really special. Well, anyway, we did some damage. The damage has been done. We can't take it back. And, we'll mark this time. And thank you very much, Savas Prabhu, for making it all, rolling out the red carpet as usual. Hare Krishna. And for being here for the whole thing. It was really nice. Because you're always so busy, It's kind of a blessing, sort of pandemic, and this is like a Sandhya maybe in the pandemic, or something like that. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna. All right, we'll try it again. We'll try this again sometime soon, right? Somewhere. Sometime. Vanchakalpaduruscha kripasindhabevacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namaha nantakoti vaishnavinaki jai. Hey, I knew you were working on something.